Her fist collided with the air, a silent promise of defiance. As Rachel stood trembling in the dim school hallway, the bitter taste of pork still lingering on her tongue. It was 1987 in a small Midwestern town, where whispers of prejudice clung to the air like damp fog. Rachel Cohen, a wiry 15-year-old with chestnut curls and eyes that held both fire and fear, had just endured the worst humiliation of her life. A group of bullies, led by Tommy Hargrove, a hulking junior with a sneer that could curdle milk, had cornered her behind the cafeteria, forcing a piece of pork sandwich into her mouth, knowing full well it violated her Jewish faith. The laughter of Tommy and his crew still echoed in her ears, a cruel chorus that made her stomach churn with shame and rage. But something inside Rachel snapped that day, a spark of resilience forged in the crucible of years of taunts, exclusion, and whispered slurs. She wasn't just a victim anymore. She was a storm waiting to break. Rachel's life hadn't always been this way. Growing up in a tight-knit Jewish family, she'd known love and warmth in her modest home, where her mother, Miriam, baked challah every Friday, and her father, David, told stories of their ancestors' courage. But school was different. The town of Millwood was small, its people mostly kind but ignorant of her traditions. Rachel's kippah, worn proudly at temple, stayed tucked in her backpack at school, a silent compromise to avoid standing out. Yet, she did stand out. Her last name, her quiet observance of holidays, the way she avoided the cafeteria's non-kosher meals. By 8th grade, Tommy and his followers had zeroed in on her, their taunts evolving from weirdo to uglier words that stung like wasps. Kike, Jew girl. She'd learned to shrink, to make herself small, hoping invisibility would protect her. It didn't. The pork incident wasn't the first time Tommy had targeted her, but it was the cruelest. It happened after lunch, when Rachel, as usual, sat alone with her packed meal of hummus and pita. Tommy and his crew, 3 boys and a girl named Lisa, whose giggles were as sharp as knives, had watched her from across the cafeteria. Rachel felt their eyes, the way predators size up prey. As she slipped out to the hallway, they followed, cornering her near the janitor's closet. Tommy held up the pork sandwich, its grease staining the wax paper. "Eat it," he'd sneered, his friends snickering. "It's just food, Jew girl. Or are you too good for it?" Rachel's heart pounded, her faith a quiet anchor in her chest. She shook her head, voice barely a whisper. "I can't. It's not kosher." That's when Lisa grabbed her arms, pinning her, and Tommy forced the meat into her mouth. The violation was more than physical. It was a desecration of her identity, her beliefs. She spat it out, gagging, tears burning her eyes as their laughter filled the air. The humiliation might have broken her, but something else stirred instead. Rachel's father had taught her about the Maccabees, Jewish warriors who fought against oppression centuries ago. Their courage lived in her blood, he'd said. That night, alone in her room, Rachel made a vow. She wouldn't let Tommy or anyone else make her feel small again. But how? She was no fighter, no hero. She was just a girl who loved books and dreamed of being a doctor. The answer came unexpectedly, in the form of an unlikely ally. Mr. Kessler, the school's grizzled gym teacher and a former boxer. Mr. Kessler had noticed Rachel's withdrawn demeanor, the way she flinched when Tommy passed her in the halls. A quiet man with a limp from an old injury, he'd grown up in a rough neighborhood and knew the look of someone fighting silent battles. One day after gym class, he pulled Rachel aside. "You've got fire in you, kid," he said, his voice gruff but kind. "But fire needs direction. Ever thought about boxing?" Rachel blinked, surprised. Boxing? It seemed absurd. She was skinny, clumsy, not an athlete. But Mr. Kessler saw something she didn't. He offered to train her after school, no charge, just a chance to learn to stand tall. Desperate for a way to reclaim her strength, Rachel agreed. The training was grueling. Mr. Kessler's makeshift gym in the school basement smelled of sweat and old leather. He taught her to wrap her hands, to move her feet, to throw a punch that carried her weight. At first, her arms ached, her knuckles bruised, but every jab felt like a release, a way to push back against the world that tried to crush her. Mr. Kessler didn't just teach her to fight. He taught her to believe in herself. "It's not about size," he'd say, tapping his temple. "It's about heart. You've got that in spades." Rachel trained in secret, telling her parents she was staying late for a study group. She didn't want them to worry, not when they were already struggling with her father's layoff from the factory and her mother's long hours at the diner. Months passed, and Rachel grew stronger, not just physically but emotionally. She stood taller, her voice steadier when she answered in class. Tommy and his crew still taunted her, but their words didn't cut as deeply. She was building armor, piece by piece. Yet the real test came on a cold March afternoon, when the bullies struck again. This time, it was in the school courtyard, where students lingered after the final bell. Tommy, emboldened by a crowd, shoved Rachel against a brick wall, mocking her faith with a slurred insult about kosher crap. His friends laughed, egging him on, as he waved another piece of pork from his lunch, daring her to eat it. The crowd watched, some uncomfortable, others amused. Rachel's heart raced, but this time, it wasn't fear, it was fury. She remembered Mr. Kessler's words. One good punch can change everything. As Tommy stepped closer, his breath hot with malice, Rachel clenched her fist. The world slowed. She saw his sneer, the glint in his eyes, the crowd's expectant hush. With a single, fluid motion, she drove her fist into his jaw, a perfect right hook born of months of training. The crack echoed in the courtyard, and Tommy stumbled back, clutching his face, shock replacing his smirk. The crowd gasped. Lisa lunged at Rachel, but another punch, swift, precise, sent her reeling too. The other boys froze, unsure, as Tommy and Lisa groaned on the ground, their confidence shattered. Rachel stood there, chest heaving, knuckles stinging, but her spirit unbroken. The crowd dispersed, whispering, some in awe, others in fear. Words spread like wildfire. The quiet Jewish girl had fought back. The school suspended Rachel for a week, but even that couldn't dim her victory. Tommy and his crew never bothered her again. More importantly, Rachel found her voice. She started wearing her kippah at school, openly observing her traditions. She spoke up in class, joined the debate team, and even helped start a cultural awareness club to educate her peers about Judaism and other faiths. The challenges didn't end there. Rachel's suspension worried her parents, who feared she was becoming reckless. She had to prove to them that her fight wasn't about violence, but about standing up for herself. Slowly, they understood, especially when they saw her newfound confidence. The town, too, was slow to change. Some students shunned her, calling her aggressive, but others, those who'd been silent victims themselves, began to approach her, sharing their own stories of bullying. Rachel became a quiet leader, a beacon for those who felt powerless. Years later, Rachel became a pediatrician, her dream fulfilled, working in a diverse city where she advocated for inclusivity in schools. She never forgot Mr. Kessler, who attended her high school graduation with a proud, crooked smile. The pork incident, once a source of shame, became a turning point, a story she shared to inspire others. It taught her that courage isn't the absence of fear but the choice to act despite it. Her faith, once a target, became her strength, a reminder that her identity was worth fighting for.